It is now over 3 years since the great galactic powers that be announced EA would no longer produce Star Wars games under the exclusive license granted them by Lucasfilm and Disney. Admittedly, that news wasn't much of a surprise back in 2021, nor was it particularly unwelcome to many Star Wars fans who bear a love-hate relationship with EA. After all, the company's rebooted Battlefront series was appreciated by many, including yours truly, but due to some initial questionable design choices and a certain loot box controversy, Battlefronts 1 and 2 ultimately failed to capture hearts and wallets on the level Lucasfilm had hoped. There was also Star Wars Squadrons, a fun but easily forgotten next-gen starfighter sim, and of course the much-loved Star Wars Jedi games which, though critically and commercially successful, have simply not proved impactful enough to warrant EA's aforementioned exclusivity bid going forward. And so at last, now that we've finally come to the official release of Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment's Star Wars Outlaws, the proof of this executive business decision is most definitely in the creative pudding. To cut straight to the heart of the matter, Outlaws is fun, mostly polished, and chock full of a Corellian freighter's worth of Star Wars awesomeness and nostalgia bait. It's also a bit shorter than expected.
You're shorter than I expected.
Jedi scum!
Not quite as pretty as hoped, mechanically stiff, conceptually rigid, and its slew of borrowed ideas will no doubt leave more than a few regular Ubisoft gamers rolling their eyes from overfamiliarity. First and foremost, Ubisoft promised us a fun, adventurous romp through the galaxy far, far away, and for the most part, they have delivered. Ubi also promised Outlaws would contain no Jedi, no lightsabers, no mystical forces controlling everything, and unequivocally so, no members of the Skywalker family. You see, there is a particular strain of non-Force-loving Star Wars fans out there who truly appreciate blaster fights and high-stakes sabacc games, and scraping by with illegal hyperfuel cargoes as the Galactic Empire just narrowly allows skin-of-the-teeth hyperspace escapes. In other words, lots of Star Wars fans like Han more than Luke, which is totally valid in my book. As far as scoundrel archetypes go, Han Solo is just about the best modern commercial storytelling has ever produced. But here's the rub. Is the essence of a good Solo-like Star Wars adventure the cool ship, the furry sidekick, the bountiful Jabba the Hutt employment opportunities? Check, check, and check. Is it about the good blaster at your side, kid? If so, then consider this last box checked as well. Outlaws has some pretty good action set pieces, with a singular holstered weapon that can be upgraded to 3 diverse tools for destruction in one. The game's controls are a little stiff, however, at least on the Xbox Series X where I collected this footage. Firefights are never as hard to manage as they might have been if a lesser development team had gotten hold of the franchise, but they're also never as smooth, precise, or frankly as gut-wrenchingly cool as the better lightsaber bouts found in EA-produced Star Wars Jedi. That comparison to the Jedi series, by the way, is perhaps a bit unfair, but it's also unavoidable. Both are third-party action games, both feature brand new hero characters forced to face a much larger galaxy than they were prepared to experience, and both very much want you to feel like a certified Star Wars badass. For all its charm and polish, however, Outlaws just never manages to reach the same heights as Jedi, even if in some ways it's bigger, more expansive, and much more ambitious. The game of sabacc is super enjoyable. The multiple open worlds policy that forms the bedrock of the game's central concept is welcome indeed. And yes, unlike a certain Bethesda tentpole from this time last year, no spacefaring promises have been broken, and players can in fact travel from planet's surface to dogfights in space, to blistering hyperspace jumps, and back again without a single menu break or dead stop old-school load screen. Riding your speeder bike over the bleached dunes of Tatooine or the narrow waterways of Akiva is also pretty fun. At first I thought the controls on my bike were just like the controls given me during combat. A bit stiff, a bit stilted, and never as precise as I wanted or required. But after a few additional hours of play, I was able to unlock perks like better steering and boost, and all was right with my repulsor-based crotch rocket world. Truth be told, exploring the breadth and depth the 5 or so open worlds Outlaws has to offer has been some of the most fun stuff to do. No, open world tasks are not any more interesting or diverse than they usually are in games of this ilk. And yes, the core experience would have you eschew exploration altogether in favor of a more channeled and authentic, narrative-driven Star Wars experience. But that doesn't mean Ubisoft and Massive shouldn't get credit for producing the first open-world Star Wars game ever. It feels good enough often enough, I even sometimes forgot I was doing the same kinds of things over and over again. And after all, repetitiveness is no major gaming sin as long as we gamers enjoy what it is we're repeating. For the most part, Outlaws' wealth of Imperial bases and blockades and factories all look, feel, and play kinda the same. Variations to form and layout certainly exist, but there is almost no variation to how you'll go about tackling them. You will sneak, and sneak, and sneak. Boy, is there a lot of sneaking. You'll knock out countless unsuspecting stormtroopers and Imperial officers, and when you finally get spotted, and you will get spotted, you'll have to blast your way out of the situation in typical Han and Chewie fashion. This piece of the Outlaws puzzle accounts for at least a third of the relevant whole, and believe me, if you're into Assassin's Creed, especially Assassin's Creed games running from AC3 up to but not including AC Origins, you are in for a real treat. That's because the stealth in Outlaws has most definitely been pinched from that other famous third-person Ubisoft franchise. And so has the dead-eye shooting mechanic from Rockstar's Red Dead series, and the Sparrow driving mechanic from Bungie's Destiny games, and a simplified version of the flying and dogfighting schemas from Starfield, and the timed rhythm gameplay of any good music sim of the last 30 years. Actually, that last one is unexpectedly cool and truly never gets old. I don't know if Han and Chewie ever needed old-school Parappa the Rappa skills in order to bust into Jabba's palace, but I certainly did. And to tell you the truth, I didn't mind one bit. But again, considering the fact Ubisoft is known far and wide for, well, borrowing elements from other games and other developers and kit-bashing them together to form something sorta kinda new, Outlaws is in many ways exactly what I expected it to be. A competent but too familiar stealth actioner that ultimately wagers pretty low at the old sabacc table. The game's central story is well told and sufficiently reminiscent of classic Star Wars, but look, to me that's a bare minimum accomplishment, seeing as how the film franchise has been around almost 50 years, and hundreds, if not thousands of different creators across multiple mediums have had a crack at the formula. I like the characters, the circumstances, the swagger and blind naivety of protagonist Kay Vess. Her cute but useful companion Nyx adds some much-needed color and strategy to most aspects of gameplay. And yeah, it is a true joy to seamlessly speed across an alien planet, park your bike in the cargo hold of your own souped-up starship, burst for the sky in glorious flight, shoot down some TIE fighters in orbit, and then narrowly punch it for a breathtaking hyperspace escape. But what is not so joyful is the repetition, the over-reliance on old-fashioned stealth, the blaster fights that never seem to feel tight, the graphics that are pretty at the world level, but that often fall apart as soon as detailed character models enter the frame. That last little bugaboo may be the greatest Star Wars sin of all, because though you'd never mistake Outlaws for a last-gen title, you'd also have a hard time comparing it to graphical titans from this very year, games like Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or the recently released Black Myth Wukong. Star Wars movies may never win Oscars for Best Picture, but they are always, and I do mean always, a feast for the eyes. But never count a good rebel out. Outlaws wants your love and nostalgia like no other. Did you see Boba Fett through the vent grating at Jabba's? Neat! And Canto Bight and Kajimi from the sequel trilogy are rendered here in full loving explorable detail? Neat? So now we come down to it and only one relevant question remains. Is Star Wars Outlaws worth your hard-won credits? Sure, I think it is. It's a bit on the shorter side, as I said, for big-budget open-world games, clocking in at perhaps 20 hours for a near-complete run-through. It's also loaded with old ideas and a slightly mixed bag of gameplay execution throughout. But it's also a hell of a good time when it tries to be. It feels like a classic scoundrel adventure, plays like a classic scoundrel adventure, contains no lightsabers and not a single Force user, and hey, you get to take down a Rancor all by yourself. Well, almost all by yourself. No scoundrel is at their best while going it alone. Ancient weapons and hokey religions are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid. But having a great Star Wars adventure without good friends and allies in tow would be like Han shooting last. Some things, dear friends, simply should never be. Jeff Bulls Central gives Star Wars Outlaws a 7 out of 10. Typically in closing I might very well say may the Force be with you, but we both know luck has everything to do with it, now don't we? Like and subscribe if you're so inclined, everybody. Hit the notification bell to receive all my latest videos as I upload them. And stay tuned to Jeff Bulls Central for more gaming, music, entertainment, and mental health discussions. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye. Not saying it ain't worth it anymore. It's just you've never given me that look before.